My fiancée left me at the altar for another man, but fate prepared the worst revenge for her. My fiancée abandoned me right at the altar to run away with her shiny office colleague. The irony of it all was that he wasn't the successful man he pretended to be, but someone who was siphoning money from the company to fund his affair with her. Now, after everything that happened, she's begging me for forgiveness. Imagine the scene. In front of about 200 people, my future wife left me standing there for another man, convinced she had found something better. What she didn't know was that her new love was hiding a dark secret. What began as the worst humiliation I had ever experienced turned into a kind of epic revenge that completely changed the course of my life. This happened in October, and only now do I feel calm enough to tell it without wanting to smash through a wall with my fists. My ex-fiancée, Catherine, 26 years old, made the decision to ruin our wedding in front of everyone, convinced it would work out for her. To give some context, we had been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and honestly, I thought what we had was solid, stable, something destined to last. We met through mutual friends at a house party. From the very first moment, the connection was natural. We understood each other instantly. A year later, we decided to move in together. Nothing extraordinary. Everything seemed like the normal process of a serious relationship. The wedding was planned to be held in a beautiful church, the same one her family had attended all their lives. For them, extremely religious and traditional people, it was vital that the marriage take place there. It cost me around $15,000, basically all my savings, but I didn't care in the least. I loved her and wanted to see her happy. My parents traveled from Ohio just to be there. My sister requested time off from work, so she could accompany me. Even my college friends made the effort to come in rented suits that were clearly uncomfortable for them. On Catherine's side, there were at least 150 people. Her family is huge, and she didn't hesitate to invite even distant acquaintances. The church was completely packed. Everything was going smoothly during the ceremony. Catherine looked stunning in her dress, and I was nervous but happy. Her father walked her down the aisle, and she was smiling while I thought about how lucky I was. The officiant spoke about marriage and commitment. We exchanged rings, and everything seemed perfect. But right at the moment of the vows, everything collapsed and hell began. It was the most important moment of the ceremony. The officiant turned to her and said, "Catherine Marie, do you take Andrew as your husband?" At that moment, she froze completely with an expression that made my blood run cold. The entire church fell into absolute silence, everyone staring expectantly, trying to understand what was happening. I thought maybe she was overwhelmed, maybe the words had gotten to her, or maybe she was just nervous. I smiled tenderly at her, giving her a sign of support, as if to say, "Don't worry, take your time, everything is fine." But the way she was looking at me wasn't that of someone nervous or emotional. It was the look of someone about to do something unforgivable. And then came the words I will never forget in my life. "I can't do this, Andrew." The echo of those words reverberated in every corner of the church. A silence so heavy fell over everyone that the only thing you could hear was the sound of breathing. I thought she was joking, that maybe I had misunderstood, but no, because immediately she continued, "I've been seeing someone else." In that instant, it felt like my soul left my body. 200 people had just heard the woman I was about to marry confess that she wasn't faithful to me, that she had chosen someone else over me. And not only that, she said it with chilling certainty. "Ryan is everything you're not. I deserve more than just settling for you." It was as if someone had ripped my heart out. My mother let out a gasp, so loud it echoed through the temple. My father turned red, looking like he was about to have a stroke. Everyone was paralyzed, unable to process what had just happened. I looked at her in disbelief, and with my voice breaking, I said, "Are you seriously doing this here now?" She shrugged as if it didn't matter, like someone refusing a piece of cake they didn't feel like eating. "I don't want to hurt you," she said calmly, "but I can't keep pretending." And then, as if that wasn't enough, she removed the engagement ring, the one I had worked 6 months to save up every last cent for, and dropped it in front of me. The metallic sound of the ring bouncing against the marble floor was louder than anything I had ever heard in my life. Catherine muttered a simple, "I'm sorry," but there was no regret on her face. On the contrary, she looked relieved, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. She turned around, lifted her dress with elegance, and began walking down the central aisle in front of all the guests, leaving me there standing, humiliated like the biggest fool. The entire place fell into absolute silence. Catherine's father looked like he wanted to disappear. Her mother covered her face with her hands, unable to look at anyone. The officiant was so bewildered he didn't even know how to react or what to say. The scene looked like something straight out of a nightmare. My sister couldn't hold back and broke into tears. Her makeup ran down her cheeks as she looked at me helplessly. My best man, not knowing what to say, placed his hand on my shoulder in an attempt to support me, but I couldn't even look him in the eyes. I felt like the whole world had just come crashing down on me. With trembling hands, I bent down, picked up the ring lying on the cold floor, and put it in my suit pocket. I didn't say a single word. There was nothing to say. Everything I had ever dreamed of with that woman had shattered into 1,000 pieces in front of everyone who mattered to me. I stood up, my legs heavy as lead, and walked toward the exit. I passed through the stunned gazes of friends, family, and strangers. No one dared to speak. Everyone was too shocked by what had just happened. Every step I took felt like the longest, most painful walk of my life. When I finally stepped out of the church, the cold air hit me full on, as if to remind me I was awake and not in a nightmare. I headed straight to my car. I got in, closed the door, and sat in silence for a few seconds, unable to react. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't call anyone. I just turned the key and drove aimlessly, with my mind blank and my heart shattered. The road passed before my eyes, but I wasn't seeing anything. I just kept replaying the image of Catherine in her flawless white dress, turning her back on me while walking away, leaving me broken in front of everyone. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't process that my entire life, my plans, my dreams, had been destroyed in a matter of minutes. With every mile I drove, the emptiness in my chest grew tighter. I didn't turn on the music because I didn't want to hear anything. I didn't call anyone because I didn't have the strength to talk. The only thing I could do was drive in silence, trying to make sense of the chaos my mind had turned into. When I finally got home, I turned off the engine and stayed motionless, my hand still gripping the steering wheel. It was as if time had stopped, and I was trapped in that moment, not knowing how to move forward. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sank into an absolute silence that hurt more than any words could. Looking back now, I realized there had been obvious signs weeks before the wedding, but I was too naive to recognize them. Catherine was always glued to her phone, even during moments that used to be sacred to us, like dinner. When I asked her, she gave me simple excuses that she was coordinating wedding details with her friends or that it was work-related. I trusted her, so I believed her. She also started staying longer at the office. She told me there were projects that couldn't wait and that she'd be back late, around 9 or 10 at night. I tried not to bother her, thinking she was working hard for our future, but every time she came home, she seemed distant, disconnected, as if her mind was somewhere else. I noticed her discomfort whenever I asked her to tell me about her day. She'd respond vaguely, saying she was stressed with wedding preparations and the workload, but she never went into detail. There was a tension I didn't know how to interpret, and now it seems so obvious. Out of the blue, she started asking me strange questions, ones that seemed innocent at the time, but now carry a completely different weight. She would say things like, "Do you think you'll ever earn more money? What would happen if someone more successful wanted to be with me?" I took it as pre-wedding nerves, normal insecurities anyone might have before taking such a big step. But no, it was her testing the waters, justifying in her head what she was already doing behind my back. Naive as I was, I smiled and tried to reassure her. I didn't realize those questions were a warning of what was about to come. That night, after the disaster, when I got home, I collapsed onto the couch, staring at the wall for over an hour. Everything was in the same place, but nothing felt the same. The apartment, which used to be full of plans and dreams, had turned into a reminder of my foolishness. The coffee mug Catherine had used in the morning was still in the sink. The wedding dress still hung on the bedroom door, like a cruel mockery of what would never be. Every detail, every object, turned into evidence that I had been a fool in love who couldn't see the truth right in front of me. That's when I started packing her things. We had lived under the same roof for 2 years, so her belongings were everywhere. Clothes in the closet, makeup in the bathroom, those decorative pillows she insisted we needed on the couch, her books on the shelves, our photos in frames. I put everything into boxes, as if by doing so I could also pack away the pain. I wasn't angry at that moment. I wasn't even crying. I just felt numb, like my mind couldn't yet process what had happened. I moved on autopilot, gathering pieces of a life that no longer existed. I called the courier service and sent all her things to her parents' house. There was nothing left to talk about. She had made her decision. What I didn't know then was that the worst was only just beginning. An hour after I had sent her things away, I heard the door open. It was my parents and my sister, who had come straight from the church. When my mother saw me sitting on the couch, staring blankly, her voice immediately broke, and she started crying again as if what had happened to her. She sat next to me, grabbed my hand tightly, and through sobs said, "You don't deserve this, son. You were so good to her, so noble." I didn't respond. I had no words. My throat felt closed, like any attempt to speak would break me even more. My father, on the other hand, was furious. He paced back and forth in the living room like a caged lion, hands on his waist, grinding his teeth. His face was red, his breathing agitated, and suddenly he exploded. "Where is Catherine? Where the hell is she?" he shouted at me, as if I knew. He stopped, looked me straight in the eye, and added, "You know what? I don't care. I just want 5 minutes with her. 5 minutes, that's all." "Dad, no," I muttered, barely audible. "It's done. There's nothing you can fix." He froze but kept shaking his head, unable to accept what had happened. "She humiliated you in front of everyone, Andrew. In front of your mother, your sister, your friends, in front of the whole damn family." Meanwhile, my sister appeared behind them. She was still wearing her dress, though now it was wrinkled and stained with tears. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes bloodshot. When she saw me, she didn't say a word. She simply crossed the room, threw herself at me, and hugged me so tightly she took my breath away. She didn't let go for a long time, as if she wanted to shield me from the pain she knew she couldn't stop. When she finally pulled away, she looked straight into my eyes, filled with rage and disbelief, and asked, "What the hell was that, Andrew?" I took a deep breath and answered with a muted voice, "I wish I knew. 1 minute we were about to get married, and the next, I wasn't enough for her." She sat in front of me, shaking her head. I always knew there was something off about Catherine. Not this bad, but something wasn't right. My mother, still crying, added, "I thought she would eventually fit in with us, that she'd adapt to the family." I slowly nodded, staring at my empty hands, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "Yeah, I thought so too," I whispered, and as if what had happened wasn't enough, someone at the church had live-streamed everything on Instagram. Of course, within minutes, the video was circulating all over social media. My phone kept vibrating nonstop with notifications, but I had it on silent. I couldn't deal with that yet. I expected mockery, insults, cruel comments. But surprisingly, instead of that, most of the messages were supportive, filled with outrage toward Catherine. People wrote things like, "Who could do that to someone on their wedding day?" Or "She's insane. Poor Andrew." The most unexpected part was that even Catherine's own family started reaching out to me. That same night, I received a long message from Catherine's mother. She sincerely begged for forgiveness, saying she was ashamed of her daughter's behavior and couldn't find the words to justify what she had done. She told me she never imagined Catherine was capable of something like that, and that she would understand if I never wanted to have any contact with them again. Shortly after, my phone rang again. This time, it was her father. With a quiet, embarrassed voice, he offered to return every last cent I had spent on the wedding. "Andrew, you shouldn't have to carry this burden," he told me. "It was our daughter who ruined everything. If you give me an account number, I'll transfer the money first thing tomorrow. This shouldn't be your loss." I will never forget how devastated he sounded, as if what had happened had hit him almost as hard as it had hit me. Even her younger brother, Jake, wrote to me later. He could barely believe what had happened. His words toward Catherine were harsh. "You didn't deserve any of this, Andrew. What my sister did was insane. I don't know what she was thinking. I'm on your side, and if you need anything, count on me." While I was receiving that support from her own family, Catherine, instead of reflecting, behaved as if nothing had happened. She didn't try to talk to me or send me a personal message, but she did update her social media as if she were living her best life. Barely 4 hours had passed since she had destroyed our wedding, and she was already posting Instagram stories from a steakhouse downtown. There she was sitting across from Ryan, smiling at the camera, raising a glass as if celebrating a victory. Seeing that scene on my screen was like taking a brutal kick to the stomach. The contrast was grotesque. Me at home, picking up the pieces of my life, and her enjoying an expensive dinner with a man who had humiliated me in front of 200 people. She didn't seem to feel the slightest guilt or shame. On the contrary, it was as if she wanted to show the world she had leveled up. I'll be honest, that night seeing those posts almost broke me. It wasn't just the pain of losing her, it was the public mockery, the cynicism with which she flaunted her new relationship as if nothing had happened. But I forced myself not to react. I knew what she wanted was for me to send her furious messages, to show up and make a scene, to give her the drama she thrived on. Catherine had always loved being the center of attention, and she was surely counting on me to play right into her game. But I didn't do any of that. I kept absolute silence. I didn't look for her, didn't text her, didn't call her. I didn't even check her social media again after that first night. It was my sister who took my phone away when she saw me obsessively replaying those stories, watching those images over and over again that were tearing me apart. She knew that if I kept looking at those posts, I'd sink deeper than I already was. And although at first I felt like just another victim, something inside me began to change. Days went by, and after the initial wave of pain and self-pity, my anger slowly turned into a kind of curiosity, a burning question inside me. Who really was Ryan, the man Catherine had ruined everything for? Catherine had mentioned Ryan a couple of times months earlier, always casually, referring to him as my colleague Ryan or a guy from work. She had never given me reasons to suspect anything, or at least I didn't know how to read them. But now, overnight, this man had suddenly become the love of her life. It didn't add up, so I decided to dig a little deeper. I started with the obvious, LinkedIn. It didn't take me long to find him, because Catherine had tagged her company's location in several of her posts. His profile read, Ryan Matthews, Senior Account Manager at a marketing company. A guy in his late 20s, expensive suit, forced smile in his profile picture. The typical executive who brags more than he really is. Still, something about his online presence struck me as odd. His Facebook was practically empty and restricted, like he didn't want anyone to see too much. His Instagram, instead of being full of personal photos, was just a catalog of motivational quotes you could copy off Google, plus the occasional picture of his car. For someone supposedly charismatic and successful, his online life was absurdly boring. What really caught my attention, though, was his behavior on social media. I noticed he never posted anything on weekends. I went through his posts and saw a clear pattern. The last one was on a Friday, the one before that on a Wednesday, and so on with all of them. I asked myself, if this guy is single, young, successful, and taking Catherine to fancy dinners and weekend getaways, why wasn't he showing any of that off? Something didn't add up, so I decided to dig deeper. For a week, I dedicated myself to what you might call digital stalking. I went through every corner of his social media, every tag, every connection. And finally, I found something revealing. I came across an old photo on his company's official page. It was a group picture from a corporate event that had taken place about 6 months earlier. All the employees were lined up, smiling. Among them was Ryan, but he wasn't alone. In that photo, he appeared with a woman, and what immediately caught my attention was the detail on his hand, a shiny wedding ring on his finger. At first, I thought maybe it was an old picture, but no, the date of publication matched that very year. I kept pulling the thread, and after checking several mutual connections, I finally found what I was looking for, his wife's Instagram profile. Yes, Ryan was married. And not only that, his wife, named Selena Matthews, was pregnant with her second child. I froze staring at the screen. Her account was full of recent photos, proudly showing her pregnancy, posting family pictures, smiling selfies with Ryan, even vacation memories together. All of that, while he paraded around with Catherine as if he were a free man ready to start a new life. But there was more. Among the comments on Selena's photos, I noticed a detail that raised a red flag. There were at least 2 women who interacted way too much with her posts, liking everything and leaving affectionate comments on almost every family photo. They didn't seem like just friends, and that's when I understood the magnitude of it all. Ryan wasn't only cheating on his pregnant wife with Catherine, he was probably maintaining parallel relationships with several other women in the city. At that moment, I knew I couldn't just sit back. I opened folders on my computer and began saving screenshots of everything I found. I documented posts, dates, interactions, every detail that could serve as proof. Within 2 weeks, I had put together a complete file, almost like a prosecutor building a case. I had enough material to completely ruin this guy's facade and show Catherine the real mess she had gotten herself into. Meanwhile, she kept posting stories with him as if to provoke me. Pictures of expensive gifts, romantic messages with the name blurred out, weekend getaways to nearby cities. She was convinced I must be consumed by jealousy, that I still cared enough to suffer watching her living better without me. What she didn't know was that Ryan was running the same game with several women at once, and that his pregnant wife was waiting for him at home without the slightest clue. As I kept gathering evidence, one big question burned in my mind. Where was all the money coming from? Ryan didn't seem to have a lifestyle that matched what he was showing with Catherine. Looking at his LinkedIn, his position as senior account manager should have been around $60,000 a year, a decent salary, but nowhere near enough to constantly pay for dinners at exclusive restaurants, weekend trips, and luxury gifts, much less with a pregnant wife and a young child at home. Then I remembered something a friend of mine in finance had once told me. Many companies give corporate cards to their managers to cover representation expenses, client dinners, or business entertainment. And if someone wanted to abuse that privilege, it would be far too easy to disguise personal expenses as business meetings. The idea started circling in my head. Could that be Ryan's secret? I didn't have direct proof yet, but everything pointed in that direction. His lifestyle didn't match his salary, and the way everything seemed calculated made me think he was using company resources to finance his affairs. 6 weeks after the disaster at the church, I was in a completely different mindset. At work, I had been so focused that my boss noticed my performance and promoted me to a senior position with a significant pay raise. It was ironic. While Catherine was parading around with Ryan, thinking she had found someone better, I was moving forward professionally without her. And instead of feeling destroyed, I started to see clearly that I had dodged the wrong person in my life. That's when I made a decision. I had to contact Selena, Ryan's wife. I knew it could be complicated, but I felt that woman deserved to know the truth, especially being pregnant and blindly trusting a man who was betraying her. One afternoon, I gathered my courage and wrote her a message through Facebook. I was as direct as possible without sounding invasive. Hi, Selena. We don't know each other, but I think there's something important you should know about your husband, Ryan. I have information about certain things he's been doing, and I think you'd want to see it. I know it's strange to get this from a stranger, but I wouldn't be writing if it weren't serious. It didn't take 20 minutes for her response to arrive. What are you talking about? And at that point, there was no turning back. I told her the whole story. How Catherine had left me at the altar for Ryan, how I discovered he was married, and how, in investigating, I found signs he was involved with other women too. I sent her screenshots, dates, comparisons, connections. I organized a file with all the evidence in chronological order with cross-references. It was practically a 30-page dossier, so detailed the FBI itself would have been proud of it. Not long after, Selena asked to talk over the phone. That call lasted more than 3 hours. Her voice reflected pain, anger, and, above all, confirmation. She told me that for months she had suspected something was wrong, but every time she tried to bring it up with Ryan, he manipulated her telling her that her doubts were just the result of pregnancy hormones or that she was exaggerating. According to her, Ryan often stayed late at the office, went out with supposed clients on weekends, and never left his phone unattended. He even lied to her about money. He told her the company had cut bonuses and that they had to tighten their budget, when in reality, he was spending thousands of dollars on dinners and hotels with Catherine and probably with other women as well. What I never imagined was that Selena wasn't the typical vulnerable wife he could keep fooling. It turned out she was a lawyer specializing in divorce and family law, a professional with experience in complicated cases with the exact knowledge needed to use the law against him. And not only that, she was furious. During that call, we went from the initial shock to planning how to completely destroy Ryan. She had the legal resources, I had the evidence. It was like forming a perfectly synchronized team, two people who had been betrayed and were now ready to turn the tables. It was Selena who gave me the first idea to file a formal complaint against Ryan and Catherine with the company's human resources department. She explained that many companies have strict policies against relationships between employees, especially when they involve potential conflicts of interest or misuse of resources. And in this case, there was clear evidence of both. When we hung up, we already had a structured plan. Selena would take care of the legal side with the divorce papers. I would provide all the documentation for the complaint to the company, and together we would make sure the other women also learned the truth. Catherine had no idea of the storm that was about to hit her. The days following our conversation were filled with meticulous preparation. She handled the legal side, while I supplied every screenshot and piece of evidence I had gathered. It was like planning a surgical operation. No impulsiveness, everything calculated down to the last detail. The first blow landed on a Tuesday morning. Ryan received the divorce papers at his office. But it wasn't a simple filing. Selena made sure it was devastating from the very first moment. Not only was she requesting the divorce, but she also included an emergency custody petition for their children, a restraining order, temporary spousal support, and the immediate freezing of shared assets. In other words, she hit him with everything the law would allow. While he was still trying to process that legal whirlwind, Selena called me to tell me how her lawyer friend had reviewed the family's bank statements. What we discovered was exactly what I had suspected. Ryan had been using the company's corporate card to finance every detail of his affairs with Catherine and the other women. We were talking about 8 months of fraudulent expenses totaling more than $12,000. Hotels, luxury dinners, weekend trips, all disguised as client entertainment. With chilling calm, Selena told me, "He's not just an adulterer anymore, Andrew. Now he's a corporate thief." With that additional proof, we put together a complete dossier and sent it directly to the company's human resources department. This wasn't just any complaint. It wasn't just about an office romance, but about fraud and embezzlement. The reaction was immediate. HR launched an internal investigation and hired external auditors to review all of Ryan's expense reports. Within days, they found enough irregularities to destroy his career. The result was swift. Ryan was fired on the spot. And the best part, Catherine didn't escape either. Even though she wasn't the one handling the cards or filing the reports, she had actively participated in the benefits of that fraud, accepting dinners, trips, and luxuries paid with company money. The company had a zero-tolerance policy regarding relationships between employees at different hierarchical levels, and since Ryan had supervised some of her projects, both of them were in direct violation of the corporate code. So that same day, Catherine was also fired. But it didn't end there. A week later, things escalated even further. The authorities got involved. Ryan was arrested at his apartment on charges of embezzlement and fraud. The news spread like wildfire because the marketing company he worked for was quite well known in the city. Local newspapers wasted no time publishing headlines detailing how a promising executive had been accused of stealing more than $12,000 in fraudulent expenses, and who appeared in those articles as his romantic accomplice and beneficiary of those luxuries. Catherine. Her name was mentioned in the press as the romantic partner implicated in the corporate fraud case. That was the breaking point for her family. Until then, her parents had tried to keep some composure, but when her father's business partner called to ask if he had seen the news about his daughter, everything collapsed. Catherine's father himself called me again to apologize, devastated and told me they had decided to cut her off financially. Associating their family name with criminal fraud was the last straw. Her mother, on the other hand, confessed in a message that she no longer knew how to face people at church or the neighbors, because everyone was asking about the scandal. Catherine, the daughter they had once wanted to show off to everyone with a dream wedding, was now the talk of the entire city, pointed out as a woman capable of destroying a life and sinking herself along with a corrupt man. It was at that moment that Catherine tried to contact me again. Right after being fired, she called me, probably thinking I would feel pity for her or that she could throw her downfall in my face. I let the call go straight to voicemail. The message she left was pathetic. She said she had made a mistake, that she didn't know what she was doing, that she wanted to talk and fix things. But for me, it was already far too late. Hearing her say that only confirmed what I had always suspected. Catherine had never truly valued me. And now, with everything she had lost, the only thing she wanted was to regain a sense of security that no longer existed. After the news broke and local papers started publishing headlines about the fraud, Catherine's life fell apart at lightning speed. Her Instagram account, which until then had been full of pictures of expensive dinners, weekend trips, and designer shopping sprees, went completely silent. No more smiling with a glass in hand. No more stories flaunting a luxury life. Just an uncomfortable void that showed how reality had finally caught up with her. She, who had always loved attention on social media, suddenly disappeared. No explanations, no public apologies, nothing. She went from showing off a perfect life to hiding overnight. And the saddest part for her was that people noticed. Her followers dropped drastically. From almost 3,000, she was left with barely over 800, and most of them seemed to be just curious onlookers sticking around to watch the train wreck. Meanwhile, Ryan's situation was even worse. Not only was he facing a brutal divorce process and criminal charges for fraud, but he had also lost his job and his reputation. The other women he had been playing disappeared from his life the moment the scandal went public. Nobody wants to stick around a married man, a fraudster, with a criminal record and a pregnant ex-wife who was leaving him with nothing. Selena, on the other hand, was handling everything with surgical precision. Using her experience as a lawyer, she secured temporary custody of her children, and the judge ruled that Ryan had to pay both child support and spousal support during the process. It was almost ironic. Right when he had lost his job and was facing legal charges, he was forced to take on financial obligations he couldn't possibly cover. Catherine, meanwhile, was left completely alone. Her parents, ashamed by the scandal, decided to cut off any kind of financial support. In the city, nobody wanted to hire her anymore. Having in her record that she had been fired from a marketing firm for being involved in a fraud case wasn't exactly attractive for a resume. With every job application, a quick Google search gave her away. Hiding the disaster was impossible. Eventually, she had to leave her downtown apartment. Without a stable job, the rent became unpayable. I found out, through mutual friends, that she had moved into her cousin Lisa's house on the other side of the city. There, she worked in a mall store, barely earning enough to cover the basics. She went from flaunting luxury dinners to folding clothes and dealing with angry customers for minimum wage. What must have been Catherine's greatest humiliation was watching her old life slowly disappear. Her social media, once her refuge and her platform of vanity, became a constant reminder of her downfall. She tried to reinvent herself by posting about personal growth and learning from mistakes. Cheap motivational quotes, accompanied by poorly edited photos, where she tried to present herself as someone growing after adversity. But no one believed her. Comments were scarce and cold. The reality was clear. You can't erase the fact that you ruined a wedding and also benefited from corporate fraud. No inspirational quote can cover up a past like that. People saw her for what she was, a woman who made terrible decisions and was now paying for them. 3 months later, Ryan pleaded guilty to embezzlement and fraud. He was sentenced to 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, in order to pay back all the stolen money, in addition to a hefty fine. To top it off, The judge banned him from ever working again in any position involving company funds, which practically shut the door on any decent job in his field. His divorce with Selena was also finalized around that time. And, as expected, Selena won absolutely everything. Full custody of the children, the house, most of the assets, and alimony payments. Ryan was reduced to nothing: debts, a criminal record, and a ruined future. Catherine, on the other hand, kept spiraling down. Without a stable job, without money, and without her family's support, she was trapped in a life she had never imagined for herself. The most devastating part was that she had lost everything in just a matter of weeks, convinced that by leaving with Ryan she was upgrading her life. The irony was brutal. The only thing she achieved was destroying herself. Her downfall didn't stop there. Over time, things got so bad that even her cousin Lisa didn't want to keep carrying her anymore. After a couple of months of having her in her house, she told her clearly that she needed to find her own place because she couldn't keep supporting her. The problem was that Catherine couldn't afford a security deposit, let alone cover the first month's rent. Her miserable paycheck from the store wasn't enough for anything. At that point, she had no choice but to call her parents again. Picture the scene. The same Catherine who once bragged about being independent, strong, and proud, now crying and begging for a space in the house where she grew up. It was her mother who answered the phone. The moment she heard her daughter's broken voice, she started crying too. However, when she passed the receiver to Catherine's father and she asked to return home, his response was very different. Her father didn't answer immediately. He told her coldly, "I'll think about it tonight and give you an answer tomorrow." The next day, he was the one who called her back. And although he agreed to let her return, he did so by imposing conditions that showed just how little he trusted her. "You can come back, but not like before. This is no longer your childhood bedroom, Catherine. If you want to live here, it will be as a tenant." He explained that she would have to pay $600 a month, plus utilities and food expenses. No living for free, no whims. On top of that, he made it very clear that under no circumstances would he allow her to bring guests, throw parties, or cause trouble in his house. "If you try to bring your drama here, you're out immediately. Even if it's midnight in the middle of January," he told her bluntly. And as if that wasn't enough, he added one more condition that struck her pride. She had to write apology letters. "Not just to me, but also to my parents, my sister, and all the close people who had been present at the wedding. You embarrassed people who truly cared about you," her father told her. "The least you can do is acknowledge it in writing." Catherine agreed because she had no other option. Returning home turned into a greater humiliation than she could have ever imagined. When she arrived, she found that her old room had been turned into her father's personal office. No bed, no childhood memories, no personal space. They assigned her a sofa bed in the basement, the same place where, as a teenager, she used to sneak boys in behind her parents' backs. Only this time, she wasn't a rebellious teenager, but an adult woman who had ruined her life with terrible decisions. Reality hit her hard. She had gone from thinking she was living a fairy tale with Ryan to sleeping in a basement, in debt, rejected by her family, unemployed, and with a destroyed professional future. All of that because of her arrogance and terrible choices. Despite living in her parents' basement and working at a store for minimum wage, Catherine still tried to convince herself she could get her old life back. She decided the best way to start was to return to the marketing world, even if it meant starting from the bottom. So she began sending resumes to small companies, hoping someone would give her a chance to start over. After weeks with no response, finally a local company called her for an interview. Catherine showed up hopeful that this would be the first step to rebuilding what she had lost. She dressed as best as she could with cheap clothes from the store where she worked, trying to look professional, though the shadow of what had happened still followed her. The interviewer welcomed her with a kind smile, but during the conversation, he noticed something strange in her attitude. Catherine tried to explain that she had left her previous company due to personality differences and an internal restructuring, a story she had invented to justify her departure. But what she didn't know was that in small cities, the corporate world is like a neighborhood. Everyone knows each other. That hiring manager had a direct contact in the company where Catherine had previously worked. And of course, he had already heard the whole story. The affair with Ryan, the scandal at the wedding, the fraud investigation, the sudden firing. So, after letting her talk, he told her calmly but firmly, "Catherine, I already know what happened. There's no need for you to make up a story." She froze. The interviewer explained that not only was he aware of what had happened, but lying during the interview proved that she hadn't learned a single thing from her experience. "You didn't just make mistakes," he continued. "You're still not taking responsibility for them. And that's what really closes doors for you." That was the final blow. Catherine realized in that moment that her reputation was ruined throughout the entire industry. It didn't matter how many applications she sent. There would always be someone who knew the story and wouldn't risk hiring her. It was as if she had been placed on an unofficial, but very real, blacklist that barred her from any chance of returning to marketing. The news spread quickly among local companies. Everyone knew what she had done, and no one wanted to associate with someone carrying that scandal. Her professional dreams vanished. Meanwhile, I watched everything from a distance. I didn't do anything to sink her. I didn't lift a finger against her. Everything she was living was the direct consequence of her own choices. She had had the chance to build a life with me, but she chose to humiliate me and bet on someone who turned out to be a fraud in every sense. And now she was paying the price for that decision. Catherine's life kept deteriorating as the weeks went by. I found out what was happening through mutual friends who still had some contact with her. Apparently, she had started eating compulsively because of stress and depression, which caused her to gain a lot of weight. That image of the always put-together woman, concerned about her figure and style, began to crumble. She could no longer afford luxuries like going to the salon, getting manicures, or buying elegant clothes. Everything she wore came from the same low-cost store where she worked. Her hair, once shiny and well-groomed, now looked dull, shapeless, as if she didn't even have the energy to comb it. It was obvious she had cried too many nights in a row. She also lost her car, since she couldn't pay the installments for the one she used to drive. The only option left was to use her father's beat-up old Honda, a vehicle that was barely holding together. For someone who a year earlier had posed on social media next to luxury cars paid with Ryan's corporate card, that transition must have been devastating. The image she had projected for years, that glamorous life with expensive dinners, trips, and a dream wedding on the way, had been reduced to nothing. All she had left was a miserable job, an old borrowed car, and a mattress in her parents' basement. Then came a night I'll never forget. It was almost 2 a.m. when I heard knocks at my door. At first, I hesitated to open it. I wasn't expecting anyone at that hour, and frankly, the last thing I wanted was a problem. I walked to the peephole, and to my surprise, there was Catherine. She was unrecognizable. Her clothes were cheap and wrinkled, her hair messy, her eyes swollen from crying so much. She had the look of someone broken inside. There was nothing left of the arrogant, self-confident woman who had left me at the altar in front of 200 people. "Andrew, please, can we talk?" she said with a trembling voice as soon as I opened the door. I stood still, looking at her. Her appearance, her gestures, everything screamed desperation. And then she started talking, tears streaming down her face, confessing that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. "I was just scared of commitment, and you were too good for me. I let panic take over the pressure of the moment," she said. She insisted that what happened at the wedding had been stage fright, that she had handled it in the worst possible way, and that she regretted it every single day since. She told me Ryan had manipulated her, that he had taken advantage of her weaknesses, that he convinced her she deserved something better, and that their relationship had a future. But in the end, it had all been a lie. Through sobs, she repeated over and over that I was a good man, that she had thrown away the best thing that had ever happened to her. "I know I don't deserve it," she said, "but is there any chance we could try again? I've learned my lesson, Andrew. I know what I want now, and it's you. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." I let her speak. I listened to her while she sat on my couch, reciting what sounded like a rehearsed speech, a mix of excuses, regret, and pleas. But while she was talking, all I could think about was that scene in the church, how she had destroyed me in front of everyone, and how she had run into Ryan's arms without looking back. When Catherine finished speaking, the room fell silent. She looked at me with red eyes, waiting for me to say something, to give her the slightest glimmer of hope. I observed her in silence for a whole minute, trying to contain the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Finally, I took a deep breath and replied calmly, but with a coldness that even surprised me. You know what's the most ironic part of all, Catherine? That you're right about one thing. You don't deserve me. What you truly deserve is exactly what you're living now. Her face went pale instantly, as if those words had been a direct blow to the stomach. She froze, unable to react, until I pulled my phone out of my pocket and opened a folder I had carefully kept. I showed her a series of screenshots, photos of Ryan in hotel rooms with other women, romantic messages sent to different girls, restaurant reservations that coincided with the same dates. He had also gone out with her. You weren't special to Ryan, I said firmly. You were just another name on his Tuesday night conquest list. While you thought he was promising you a future, he was doing the exact same thing with at least 2 other women at the same time. Catherine stared at the evidence on the screen with trembling lips, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Up until that moment, she had convinced herself that what she had with Ryan had been real, that even though it ended badly, at least it had been an authentic relationship. But there was the truth right in front of her eyes. She had never been unique to him, just another victim of his game. Before she could say anything, I stood up and went to a drawer. I came back with a sealed envelope I had been keeping for weeks. I handed it to her and said, "Oh, and I almost forgot. Selena wanted me to give you this." Catherine took the envelope with trembling hands. She opened it and read in silence. It was a cease and desist letter drafted by Selena's lawyers. Turns out, after the scandal came to light, Catherine had started harassing Selena on social media. She left malicious comments, sent private messages full of insults, and even tried to blame her for ruining her relationship with Ryan. What she didn't expect was that Selena had documented every message, every attack, and now she was ready to press harassment charges if Catherine didn't stop immediately. At that moment, Catherine completely broke down. Her tears flowed uncontrollably, her body shook, and she could barely speak. Between sobs, she repeated over and over that her life was destroyed, that she had nothing left, that she had lost everything that once mattered to her. She begged me to take her back, to give her another chance, assuring me that she had learned her lesson and would never take me for granted again. I looked at her, but inside me there wasn't a trace of compassion. The only thing I felt was a profound sense of release. So I replied with the same coldness as before. The only thing you can do for me, Catherine, is get up and walk out of my life. Don't ever look for me again. Don't ever contact me again. It's over. And it was over the very moment you chose to humiliate me in front of everyone who mattered to me. She kept crying, stammering apologies and pleas, but I simply walked to the door, opened it, and stood there, waiting for her to get the message. Finally, she gathered her things, eyes vacant, and walked out slowly. I watched her leave in her father's old Honda, her face shattered, and the only thing I felt was relief. No anger, no sadness, no regret, just peace. It was as if I had finally closed a chapter that should never have begun in the first place. After that night, when Catherine showed up broken at my door, I knew I would never see her again. And honestly, I didn't want to. I had put a definitive end to it, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with myself. However, the story didn't end there, because throughout the whole process of exposing Ryan, there was someone else who became a constant presence in my life, Selena. From the moment we started working together, our conversations became more and more frequent. At first, we only talked about evidence, plans, and strategies to legally bring Ryan down, but little by little, those conversations started to extend. After reviewing documents, we'd end up sharing anecdotes about daily life, talking about our fears, our dreams, and even what we hoped for in the future. Selena was intelligent, determined, but at the same time, she showed a vulnerability that made her very human. I was surprised at how strong she remained, despite being pregnant and facing such a complex divorce. I admired the calm way she handled everything, and how clear she was about what she deserved for herself and her children. I was also wounded, and on more than one occasion, our conversations turned into mutual vents. There were moments when I caught myself smiling at her ironic sense of humor, or staying up late just to keep talking with her. I realized I was beginning to feel something more, though I resisted admitting it. One day, I found myself reflecting. Wasn't I becoming the same as Ryan, pursuing a woman who was still dealing with a broken marriage? That thought hit me hard. I didn't want to be the kind of man. I didn't want to take advantage of someone in a vulnerable moment. So I made a tough decision to cut off contact. I deleted her number, removed her from social media, and distanced myself, even though deep down it hurt to do it. Months went by where I focused on my job, on rebuilding my life, on regaining stability. And just when I thought it was all behind me, fate crossed our paths again. One afternoon, while walking downtown, I stopped by a cafe for a quick drink. And there she was, Selena. I hadn't seen her in weeks, and I was surprised at how good she looked. Her divorce was finalized, her children were doing well, and she had landed a position in an even bigger law firm, earning more money and with incredible career prospects. You could see in her eyes and in the way she spoke that she was calmer, more confident, like someone who had survived a storm and was now walking firmly forward. We greeted each other, and what was supposed to be a casual encounter turned into a conversation that lasted almost 2 hours. We caught up on everything, laughed about how absurd our master plan against Ryan had been, and shared how each of us was rebuilding our lives. Before leaving, she thanked me again for everything I had done, saying that without my help, she wouldn't have discovered so much or been able to move on so quickly. We didn't talk about feelings or what had been between us before, but there was something different in the air, a latent connection, more mature, less impulsive, and much more conscious. That same week, we started messaging each other again, not to talk about fraud or revenge, but simply to chat. Eventually, one weekend, we went out on what could be called our first official date. And it was perfect. Selena was funny, intelligent, with that spark that attracted me so much, but also with the serenity of someone who had learned to value loyalty after being betrayed. I realized that despite all the chaos we had gone through, we were in completely different stages of our lives. Neither of us was the same broken person from the beginning. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could start over with someone who understood the true value of trust. And the best part, it was without ghosts, without lies, without betrayals. Today, looking back, it's incredible how much my life changed in such a short time. I went from standing at an altar, convinced I was about to begin a new chapter with Catherine, to being humiliated in front of 200 people, and later uncovering the web of lies she and Ryan had woven behind my back. For weeks, I thought my world was over, that I could never recover from such a blow. But the truth is, life had other plans for me. Catherine completely vanished from my life. After that night, when she came to my door begging, I never saw her again. No calls, no messages, no desperate attempts to contact me. I suppose she finally understood there was nothing left between us. And I'm grateful for that, because I don't need to carry a memory that only represents deceit, pain, and humiliation. The only thing I feel for her now is indifference, a strange calm that only comes when you truly close a wound. Ryan, for his part, became the perfect example of how a seemingly promising life can collapse because of greed and lack of values. From successful executive, he turned into an ex-convict with a fraud record, divorced, unemployed, and with a destroyed reputation. Everything that happened to him was the consequence of his own decisions. All I did was show the truth he tried to hide. But the most surprising part of all was what I found in the middle of that chaos: Selena. At first, we were just two wounded people sharing evidence and strategies to get back at the one who betrayed us. But little by little we discovered there was something more. A genuine connection, built not on false illusions or appearances, but on shared pain, lessons learned, and a new way of valuing loyalty. Our first date was just the beginning of something that, though still new, felt real, honest, and completely different from what I had with Catherine. With Selena, there were no masks, no secrets, just a woman who had gone through hell and come out stronger, and a man who had been broken but found in her a reason to believe again. I don't know what the future will bring. Nobody can predict how things will end. But what I do know is that for the first time in a long time, I feel free from the past. I no longer carry the bitterness of what Catherine did to me, nor the pain of being deceived. That chapter is closed. And though it was painful, it was necessary because it taught me not to settle, not to ignore the signs, and not to give my life to someone who doesn't value it. Now I walk forward with the certainty that I deserve something better. And the best part is that, against all odds, I found someone who knows exactly what that means. Selena and I didn't start our story in the middle of lights and empty promises, but in the middle of ruins. And maybe that's why it matters so much, because we both know what it costs to rebuild and how much it means to have someone by your side who won't run when the storms arrive. That's the true ending of this whole disaster. Catherine lost what she never knew how to care for. Ryan paid for every lie and every theft. And I, after it all, ended up gaining the most important thing, a second chance.